Welcome back after an easy lunch with heavy desserts. I already had to say goodbye to some people who had to leave early, so I'm very happy that we can start with session 8 early as well, to give many of you the chance to listen to the presentations. So welcome to session 8. Output of statistical business registers. We have 5 presenters and 1 technician who will give you the presentations, and I'd like to introduce the topic. When the story of business registers began, it was about survey frames. It was about infrastructure. And when we continued to think how we could organize these survey frames, it became business registers, and the business registers have been increased, contain increased information more and more. Then we were able with the business register to satisfy even more ambitious infrastructural demands or tasks, namely data combination. All this was done inside the offices. We had inside users in the offices. But as all the data that could be obtained in or by the business registers became aware to ourselves, we became even more ambitious. And we started from the business register in statistical data production. Demography, for example, is a field of data production which is very close to running of a business register itself. But almost any other issue can be tackled nowadays via the information we store in the business registers, or which is available via the business register information. And so we went from the cellar to outside to the sun. So we now address external users as well. But addressing external users puts us also in a new role. It puts us in a new role inside our offices. Are we now a rival to our other statistics producers? It puts us in a new situation. We are now also open and visible to external judgment. And it also opens new issues, like how to treat confidentiality, which in the old world we had not to deal with. So the 5 presentations of these sessions just allow some glimpses in several of the aspects I tried to mention here. And I welcome our first speaker. We have Mariana from Montenegro, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. First of all, I wish to thank to organizers for all of these days of our enjoyment. And today I will present you a short story about Montenegrin Statistical Business Register and his outputs. My presentation is divided on the 4 parts: introduction, the sources of the Statistical Business Register maintenance, users, and outputs of the Montenegrin Statistical Business Register. In the part of introduction, I want to tell you that our Statistical Business Register was established at the beginning of 2007. A few years ago, Statistical Business Register in Montenegro has served only as a directory for finding lists of units, legal and statistical units. Today, we have as a main goal tendency that Statistical Business Register be a backbone for all statistical surveys. Statistical business register is a live register in which the composition and characteristics of units continuously change over time. Our business register covers all active business entities carrying out activity in the territory of Montenegro. Very important thing is that our business register produce data which are comparable between countries due to standardization of definitions, variables, units, etc. Statistical business register in Montenegro is composed of two parts, the administrative and statistical part. In administrative part, we store legal units. In statistical parts, we have all statistical units, such as enterprise, which is the enterprise cow units, local units, and enterprise groups. There is always consistency between these two parts of the registry. Administrative sources and the different statistical surveys are used for updating this register. Statistical business register provides the link between administrative data inputs and statistical data outputs. And then all data changes along with the date of changes and the source in which we find this information are stored in the historical database table in the statistical business register. And the impact of globalization imposes more extensive coverage of statistical units and their coverage. Something about sources of the statistical business register maintenance. Maintenance of statistical business register is not a single process. It is continuous activity. The frequency of the register maintenance is a crucial point in the timeliness of the register. In our office, we maintain our register from different sources in different periodicity. The main sources for us can be administrative register, register surveys, feedbacks from survey results, and other surveys. For us, we mainly use administrative sources because we need less response burden. As the main administrative source, we use tax authority register. Also, we use central register of business entities and central bank register. And also, we use signed agreements of understanding with some institutions like Montenegrin Business Alliance, Union of Employers, and Agency for Telecommunication. We have plans to have more this kind of agreements with other institutions. In Montenegro, the registration is operated by a so-called one window system. Statistical register can see and use directly all the registration information. It is called like one window because in the past we had situation that if someone wants to register activity, then he must go in so many institutions, and now we have situation that in one place they can finish everything about registration. The main sources of the statistical register, as I mentioned, are the administrative sources. Second source for maintaining are business register surveys. We have some business register surveys about medium and large enterprises, about enterprises who has establishments, and about enterprise groups. Primary purpose of these surveys is to collect information to update our register. We can also use them for control the quality of the register, but also we use them because we don't have a good administrative source for this very important information and variables. If we speak about users of our statistical business register, then I can say that we have internal and external users, different type of users who need different statistical data for different purposes, define different needs for statistical data. Our internal users are all statistical surveys. External users can generally be divided into 7 groups: government institutions, local government units, NGOs, research centers, national and international organizations and embassies, financial institutions, enterprises, associations, chambers, and the public, media, educational institutions, and citizens. But I want to tell you that all of this data can be used only on the different levels of aggregation, because in my country all individual data are strictly confidential. Outputs of the Montenegrin Statistical Business Register. The basic products of dissemination of statistical data are printed and electronic publications, statistical data organized in databases that are available on the website or internally within the database available to the statisticians. Monstat is aware of the obligation to present statistics to the public in a systematized and classified manner. The main role of the Statistical Business Register is that it represents a base used to carry out statistical surveys. As each year its significance grew, so more and more outputs began to grow. For years, from our Statistical Business Register produced outputs for the purpose of satisfying different user needs. I forget to tell you that we have a good situation in our country because we have unique ID number, and we have good situation when we need to link data from different administrative sources. One of the most important output of the Statistical Business Register is frozen frame, which is produced at the end of each year, and this frozen frame is used by all statistical surveys. Frozen frame contains all units which were active during the observed year, and is available for all internal users depending on their needs. From the Statistical Business Register we have outputs which are available through publication: number and structure of business entities in Montenegro, which were published in March of the current year for the previous year. In this publication we have a number of business entities by activity, by sector of activity, by municipalities, by size, etc. Also, we have a publication which name is the number and structure of enterprises which has foreign owners in July of the current year for the previous year. Also, in this publication, we have published data on the different levels of aggregations by municipalities, by country of origin of owner, etc. We publish from the Statistical Business Register also release about newborn and and inactive enterprises. In previous year, driven by demand of users, we published data on owners of active enterprises observed by gender. Unfortunately, we don't have possibility to publish this, to make this publication for previous year because we didn't have enough human resources, but I hope that we will prepare this publication again because she was very, very interesting for many researchers, for our government and for other institutions. In order to comply with the international standards, Mondstadt insists that the entire process of organizing, collecting, processing, and disseminating data be accompanied by clearly defined procedures adapted at Mondstadt level. Maybe I forget to tell you that Mondstadt is statistical office of Montenegro. We made the dissemination strategy also. The goal of the dissemination strategy is to make the statistics available to all users in comprehensible manner at the same time and under the same conditions. The dissemination policy in Mondstadt is implementing through 5 strategic objectives: creating demand for Mondstadt data, continuous availability of data, clarity of data, data distribution channels, and communication with users, depending by user type and the type of needs. Distribution channels are website, email, information line, publications and communications, combined distribution channels, and our library. And this is some pictures from my country. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mariana. Other questions? Maria Rosa?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much, Mariana. Very interesting presentation. You mentioned that among the data that you publish and disseminate, there are information by gender of owners. And I was wondering if you only have sole proprietor or if you also cover other ownership structure, and if it is the case, what is the methodology?
Thank you, Maria Rosa. We cover all not only ownership, not only entrepreneurs, all type of enterprises, also state government, local governments, and etc. We try to find a number of women which are on the main positions, and also women which are owners of enterprises. We use our ID number, our personal ID number, which contain 13 digits. And we have 3 digits which are cover gender, and then we, based on this number, we produce this publication about number of women which are women and men which are the owners of enterprises.
Another question? I see none. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is from Zolt Wolfinger from Eurostat. And you try yourself to put on the screen? Or?
I think I will.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. I would like to make with this presentation some publicity to a new Eurostat publication, what we published on structure of multinational enterprise groups in the EU. So these data are from the EGR, the register what we run in Eurostat in our team. And I will show you how we publish the data first time on multinational groups. This is now experimental statistics, what we published. What is this? I will also explain. And the main methodological point I would like to also to show to you for your comments and the future considerations. So we know that multinational groups, they play a major role in our economies, so they really contribute to production of goods, services, employment, investment, everything. Despite we have a growing interest on this topic, actually Eurostat doesn't publish anything on multinational enterprise groups themselves. So to meet this information need, Eurostat started publishing experimental statistics on the multinational groups, on the groups themselves, how they are in the EU and the EFTA countries. And the statistics, what we publish, are based on our EGR data, because we have EGR, which is a valuable database and having a lot of data on groups. So that's why we decided to start first with experimental. So what is experimental statistics? Is a new concept in Eurostat. Eurostat started publish experimental statistics in 2017, last year. So these statistics, which are experimental statistics using new data sources or new methods to respond those needs which are present between the users. And these needs are not met by official statistics for the moment. So we know that experimental statistics, they do not meet all quality criteria what official statistics should meet in the EU. So it's not fully mature. We could have some problems with coverage, methodology, harmonization. But we remind the users that these are experimental statistics, and we always give a clear sign, and we also always give clear methodological notes on the nature of these statistics. There are several publications on Eurostat website under the experimental statistics sub-page. Also, the statistics on multinational groups is one of them. So the main reason why our data are treated as experimental, that the EGR database is incomplete. So completeness, accuracy of the EGR data is not yet perfect. So we have a very big coverage on large and medium-sized groups. I think over there we are complete. We cover all large, medium-sized groups which are present in the EU. But however, we estimate in the smaller groups, we only cover 60%. We could miss some structures because of problems in identification. We don't accept any group without identified relationships, or by any other reasons. We could have fragments, we could have some other problems in the database. So it's not possible for the moment to take very precise conclusions based on the EGR data, but at least we decided this is the starting point to start publishing data on the multinational groups themselves. And also an issue that EGR data are not always comparable with national data. Countries are publishing data on foreign affiliates, for example, and those data are not always in line with the EGR total numbers, because they only use EGR as one of the sources, but they have more sources. And also the national view can be different, because what we do in EGR, we combine the national views into one final view on the groups, which not necessarily is the same as the national views. We can also have broken structures, we can have fragments in the system, so there are several reasons why our data are not official statistics for the moment. So we started with a very simple dissemination article. This can be found on the Eurostat website. We wanted to avoid not to have any overlap with official statistics published for the moment, like foreign affiliate statistics, because they publish data nationally in the NS, our member states, on the foreign affiliates. So we focus on the groups, really to show the characteristics of the multinational enterprise groups in the EU, how many groups are in the country, how many of them have the decision center in the country, what is the size based on the employment, what is the complexity based on the different activities in the group, what is the European presence based on the number of countries they are present with employment of these groups. We also list the top 5 partner countries of the countries groups, and we also make a table on the employment of the multinational enterprise groups in the EU. So it's simply, for the moment, what we do is just an article on our Statistics Explained web page. You can consult this on the Eurostat website. We did the first exercise in the beginning of 2018 with 2015 data, and it was updated with 2016 most recent EGR data in July this year. And we plan to do yearly updates with the yearly quality improvements. The data tables are extracted from the EGR, so this is only EGR data, nothing else is used for this publication. We always publish EU28 numbers, so aggregated numbers for the EU, and we all consulted before with the NSIs, with the member states, and we only publish national data if they agree to publish their data. They agree if the national data are not too far from national publication data. So we have about half, a bit more than half of the countries which said yes, and what we can show in our different tables and graphs, and the EU28 is always there. One critical point I would like to explain here, what we publish is not the full population of the EGR. In EGR we had 110,000, 111,000 groups. We only publish a subpopulation which is called active multinational groups, or multinational groups active in the EU. So the condition to be active, we defined a definition that those groups which have employees in the enterprises in 2 or more countries in the EU, at least one of them in the EU. So we need employment. It's not enough to have one company here, one company there, but both are dormant. So those are not in our population. Those are in the EGR because we collect everything, all type of relationships. But we only publish those where at least one employment is in one country here, one country there, and one of them is in the EU. So that actually means only 43% of all EGR groups which are active, and 57% of the EGR groups are inactive. I have also a table here, I don't know how far it's visible, on the active groups, which is the 47,000 on the right side, and all the rest are inactive groups with different reasons. We have some groups where they have employment only in one country, but they have more than one enterprise. So this is the color code, the 31,000. It's quite frequent. We have more than one enterprise, maybe in one country with heavy employment, really persons employed are visible. There is a parent company somewhere registered in another country, let's say in Cyprus, Luxembourg, but there is no enterprise behind. So simply a dormant unit is the owner. It's a question, is this a multinational group or not? Is this an active multinational group or not? For sure, it's not an active multinational group. At least in the publication, we exclude. And there are other type, employment only in one country and in one enterprise only. And we also have groups. At this stage, those are like without employment, even if they have more than one enterprise, or with one enterprise, or even no enterprise. So actually, we have 2,500 groups in EGR, which are only legal structures. There is one company in Cyprus, a subsidiary company, I don't know, somewhere else, but there are no enterprises at all. No employment, nothing really, so seems to be kind of a dormant entities are linked to each other. We have to analyze this, what is the reason of these entities. But we found very specific structures, so just an example, we found a structure more than 500 legal units in Cyprus without any enterprise, because there is a group or there is a company which is setting up companies in advance for selling. And if somebody wants to create a company in Cyprus, they just go to this agency and they immediately have one because they sell them this company. So it's like a company factory doing empty companies. And they also have some of them in Russia, so that means multinational. So is it really multinational or not? We don't have any enterprise in this case, and this is not in our population. So we see there are a lot of things to check for the future, because it's very frequent, I'm sure, that legal units in one country is empty or dormant. That's why we miss from our population those groups. Or there can be also that we miss some data, because how we collect the data, it's an iterative process. Maybe we don't have the legal unit because it's not delivered by the source. Always the NSIs are the sources for the enterprises. Maybe we miss the employment figure. We know we miss some employment figures, so it's also an issue, and we have to put emphasis on this in the future to really collect all employment figures. So there could be multiple reasons, natural reasons because of dormant entities, and also some missing data issues why this population is composed like this. Of course, we want to continue with this, so we will continue the work on EGR, including the dissemination. We have to analyze the EGR coverage and these dormant or missing entities. We have to improve the coverage and the data quality. We want to collect all the missing relationships to keep the groups together. We want to collect employment values to keep those entities in the dissemination which would be there. We also would like to work on developing some methods, for example, for imputation of missing values, or maybe web scraping to get some missing information, mostly outside Europe. Or also we would like to analyze, this is also one key target of the experimental statistics, to analyze the user feedback and improving the output based on the user feedback. But if I would like to conclude, I have a conclusion that EGR is for sure a very rich database. We have a lot of data in EGR, and we continuously working with our member states to improve the EGR quality. And I think as soon as we will have sufficient level of quality, EGR can be also a source of official statistics on the multinational groups. And our aim is to improve our product and once change from the experimental statistics to really official statistics on the multinational groups which are present in the EU. So it will not come today or tomorrow, but in a short time it will come. Okay, so this is my presentation, and I can advise you to go to the link in the presentation of the document, and you can find our publication on the Eurostat website. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Solt. Are there questions or comments on the presentation? This is, I guess, some result of the dessert orgy that we enjoyed. Okay, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
On this, you explained about how you treat employment to, say, identify or to judge whether a group is considered as active or not. And you explained about the data gaps you may have in the EGR. So how much trust do you have in that, say, activity judgment, and about the following, things you explain about the groups, like how big are they, if the employment is missing and you judge it by employment? Do you see,
well,
how do you judge yourself the quality of this?
We trust in the figures what we have in EGR, because those are mostly from the NSIs. So I think if there is employment 0 in the file, what we got, mostly there is really no employment in that enterprise. So I would say I trust what could be missing, and what is the issue that we could miss some enterprises which will never deliver to us, and this we cannot really control, so we have to improve in the future on this. But that's why the data are experimental, so this is not yet official. There are some question marks what we have to solve. Mm-hmm. This original classification was created with the practical requirements, because once we wanted to make classifications of the groups, like based on the employment, and if there was no employment, most of the groups we couldn't even classify, because we couldn't tell it's employment in 1, 2 or more countries. So I think it's a crucial factor to have the employment, and it also shows, I think, which is also in other registers normal, if you have a big population, you also have a lot of inactive units. Because I heard in several presentations, I have 1 million enterprises, 400,000 are active. It seems that EGR is reaching such a size that we also have such an issue, that we also cover inactive groups, and just a part of our population is really which is showing activity during the reference year.
Okay, Netherlands.
I understand you avoid publishing the results or comparing them with the FATS results, but if you would do that, how big would be the gap at that point?
Well, FATS is publishing data on the foreign affiliates only, so not on the full groups, but only the national parts of the groups. If we would publish FATS data from EGR, the gap would depend on the sources what we have. For some countries, the similarity is like 90%. But that means over there, the FATS is produced together with the business register. Maybe the main source what they use is the EGR, or the business register is really a copy of the EGR. In some other countries, what we see, it would be 20%. Because over there, the FATS is produced by the central bank, They have other sources, they don't use EGR, or they use EGR as one of the sources. So it's difficult to say one number, but depending on the production line, what the countries are doing, FATS and EGR data are for the moment different, and by different production different way of production.
Okay, any more reactions? Austria?
Regarding the topic of employment, I was thinking maybe if you could give us the thoughts about also taking into account profit, because I was thinking of something like a construct, like a licensing holding in one country that is kind of taking profits from another country's legal entities, and which, I don't know, maybe doesn't need employment and may still be active.
Yeah, for sure. This condition can be fine-tuned. Like in business demography, they also have employment, turnover on investment, at least one of them. For EGR, the turnover figures are not really reliable, so we have quite a lot of missing data. That's why for the moment we decided only use the employment figure because that's the most reliable. But once we can improve our coverage and data quality, we can also fine-tune this condition.
Okay, any other reactions? Norbert Reiner?
Yes, thank you. I think in principle it's always good to publish data, because that's our main job. And of course we have to evaluate the data and make provide information on the quality of the data. I just opened this site, which I have not seen before, so maybe my question is nonsense. But I understand experimental statistics is mainly not in tabular form, but in graphical form. So, and you have one table.
It depends on the authors, how they wish to publish these data. So we decided to make it a graphical form.
Okay.
But some other domains, they do tables, cubes, different display of the information.
Okay. And
yeah.
I've seen one table, and this one table is the number of multinational groups operating in the EU and EFTA countries in 2016. That's the first table. And here I'm wondering why certain countries are missing. I can imagine why Austria is missing.
So as I mentioned, we did the consultation with the countries, and we just publish the data if they really agree to publish the national data.
Yes, but
if there is a big difference to national figures, they don't agree.
Yeah. But big countries like UK, Netherlands, even France, if I see it correctly, are missing here.
Yeah, those countries all didn't agree to publish national data.
Oh,
so over there we have to improve. We have to improve EGR population and comparability with national populations. Yes.
Okay, thank you again. Salt.
Okay.
Our third presentation comes from Korea. And I welcome on the stage Kim Bo-kyung. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, hello, I'm Bo-kyung Kim and I work for the Economic Statistics Division in Statistics Korea. Before I start the presentation, I'd like to say that this presentation was prepared by my colleague, Ms. An Eun-jin. She moved to another department just 3 weeks ago, so I'm going to make a presentation instead. Even though I started to work for this division just 2 months ago. So I try to do my best, but please understand my lack of detailed knowledge. And this is the content of my presentation. I explained the status of Korean small and medium enterprises, and the problem we have in producing the SME statistics, and brief introduction of SBR, and our attempt to make SME statistics using SBR. And you can find this figure in the OECD Economic Outlook. It shows that Korea grew rapidly in 1990s. Rapid growth has been export-led with large business groups. Since 1990s, the Korea's growth rate has been decreased. At the same time, the Korean economy faces slowdown in growth potential. Polarization between the large companies and small and medium-sized enterprises has exposed limitations of traditional growth model. Accordingly, the Korean government wants to make SMEs a driver of innovation and job creation. SMEs play an important role in the Korean economy. Policymakers want reliable statistics to make sound economic policies. Current basic statistics on SMEs are the census on establishment as a population. In Korea, when we want to emphasize the importance of SMEs, we often say that 99-88, which means the SMEs account for more than 99% of all Korean enterprises and 88% of total employment. However, there are some limitations or problems with these statistics. First, I said that the number of SMEs account for 99% of all Korean enterprises, but the statistical unit that was used in that figure is actually establishments, not enterprises. Therefore, some establishments were classified as SMEs even though they were branches of large enterprises. For example, all branches of Starbucks, which has more than 5,000 employees, are classified as SMEs. So these statistics overestimate the share of SMEs in employment. Second, the census on establishment does not cover establishments without a fixed location, because it is impossible to identify a business that does not have a physical location through field surveys. As the growth of online businesses that does not have fixed locations is growing, the shortcomings of census on the coverage issue is nothing to be ignored. And census requires huge resources such as manpower and budget, and there are problems with the worsening survey environments such as response burden and low response rates. So Statistics Korea has started to think another option, SBR, that uses administrative data as its main source of statistics. In summary, we have to find out a better method to make SME statistics. This is the direction that we try to achieve in improving SME statistics. First, we should change the statistical units from establishments to enterprises. Second, we should expand our data sources from census on establishments to business register. In this way, the statistics can cover businesses without a fixed location and micro SMEs and self-employed that are registered as value-added taxpayers. Before I introduce the Korean SBR, I'd like to point out that we are in the very early and initial stage of SBR and in the process of learning and studying the SBR. And the SBR is not yet completed, and we don't use the SBR as a sampling frame for most of our business surveys yet. I think we have to deal with the quality issues and coverage issues before we can use it as a sampling frame. Then I explain our SBR. Statistics Korea receives data periodically from National Tax Service, National Insurance Service, Ministry of Interior and Safety, and etc. The SBR is made in combination with the administrative data, economic census, and others. The SBR aims to capture all the businesses of all sectors of the country's economy. Using administrative data, it is possible to identify different types of businesses without fixed sites, such as web-based businesses. And Statistics Korea currently uses the 10-digit business registration number and the 13-digit corporation registration number for the identification of statistical units and data linkage. And this is our first initial matching result. In 2014, the number of units in the administrative data was 6.8 million, and the number of establishments in our economic census was 3.7 million. The number of establishments that were matched one-to-one by the BR number was 3.2 million. And there were 3.5 million businesses that existed only in administrative data, and 1.1 million of these were inactive. And 0.3 million businesses are only found in survey data, and these are unregistered businesses or have an unidentifiable number. And next is the content of our SBR. There are three types of statistical units, such as enterprise group, enterprise, and establishments. For basic information, there are corporate registration number, business registration number, representative information, business location code, address, telephone number, kind of activities. For additional information, there are annual turnover, the number of employees, etc. And this is the 2015 results. I'm sorry for the misspelling. It is the data, not that. And back to the SME statistics. In Korea, the Act on SMEs defined SMEs, and the Act was amended. The criteria for SMEs has changed from the number of employees for the three employees to the 3-year average sales. So you can see that. And SMEs are characterized according to their industry, and different industry has a different limit on average sales. As you can see that this definition is very complicated, and the Department of SMEs has a responsibility to make SME statistics by law. So Statistics Korea and Department of SMEs has been in cooperation to make better SME statistics. And this is a provisional result of SME statistics using SBR. There were 6.63 million enterprises, and among them 6.62 million were SMEs. This was more than 3 million figures compared with the result of the census on establishment. But the share of SMEs are almost same as 99% of the total number. The next is provisional result of the number of employees. There were 16 million SME employees out of 20 million employees in the SBR. This is 1.5 million bigger than the census result. But the share of SMEs in SBR dropped to the 81% of the total. And as I mentioned before, the SBR is in its initial stage, and future tasks will be to improve the quality and coverage of SBR and SME statistics through continuous works. And thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Kim.
Yes.
Are there reactions from the audience? Maria Rosa?
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Two questions. I understand correctly that in the new SME data that you are experimenting and soon disseminate, the coverage will include also the smallest unit that were not covered by the previous data based on the census. And the second is that so what you were able to measure with the new data are the real independent SMEs, because the new share 81% of SMEs over the total seems rather low, but is probably what one could find in other countries if only the independent SMEs were in fact measured instead of also the SMEs that are part of larger groups.
Excuse me, sorry, could you repeat the first question?
Just a confirmation that the new data cover all the units and there are no threshold that exist in the current Korean data on SMEs, where I think units with less than 3 employees are not covered by the data, by the population.
I think we have no limit to be included in the SMEs, and the reason that the number of SMEs in the SBR is larger than the old ones. In Korea, for example, the person who rents his house to others is encouraged to get a business license at the tax office. That they are included in the SBR only. So that's why the number is bigger than the old one. And the second question was?
The second question, I was wondering about the share you show in this last slide, that as a result, the share of SMEs out of the total number of enterprises is 81%, which is a share lower than what you would find in most of the OECD countries. And I was wondering if it's that you really measure only in independent SMEs.
Oh, I can.
So the reason why this share of SMEs is lower than Maria Rosa would expect?
Oh,
It's not
the
that
81% is the share of the number of employees, and I think in Korea the large corporations have big employment share than other countries. It's the share of the number of employees, not number of enterprises. And the number of enterprises is 99%.
Okay, no, so it's the employees,
Yeah.
employment, not.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I missing. Yes, it's the person in your last row. Where there is enterprise in bracket. What you show is the how much employment is accounted by SMEs. It's not okay. So it's what I expected.
Okay. Any other remarks, questions, or comments? Then Kim, may I ask you,
Yes.
From one of your slides I read that there are 380,000 units which are only surveyed but not in the administrative data.
Yes.
So my question is, how could you approach them, how could you catch them with a survey? What was the method of the survey to have them?
We have enumerators to visit in the area to find the establishments.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Okay,
Kim,
thank you.
very much. Our next presentation comes from New Zealand. And I see that Matthew Page is preparing. Perhaps our technical assistant could also prepare the slides. New Zealand. New Zealand, good. Okay, Matthew, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Right, 2 to go. I'll try and be brief. So my name's Matthew Page from Stats New Zealand. I'm presenting the noise for counts and magnitudes confidentiality method and the generation of New Zealand business demography statistics. This is on behalf of our business register team in New Zealand and also Francis Krinich, formerly of our methodology team, who developed this approach and authored the underlying paper. Today I'm going to cover the history of confidentiality methods used in our business demography statistics and what our customers want from our BD data. I'll then move on to an overview of the method we have recently introduced, the noise for counts and magnitudes method. I'll then move on to more detail by explaining how we use it to confidentialise business counts and employee counts and how this has been applied in practice. To give you a brief overview of New Zealand business demography statistics, we have about 600,000 enterprises operating in the New Zealand economy. We release business demography on an annual basis and present both enterprise counts and associated employee counts by the likes of industry and institutional sector, like a lot of other countries. We also present geographic unit counts and associated enterprise counts regionally. Up until the 2014 release of BD data, we did not apply any confidentiality to enterprise or geographic units counts. However, employee counts were subject to graduated random rounding or GRR. With GRR, cells of different sizes are rounded to different bases. The rounding base increases as the cell size gets bigger. However, a regulation review found the release of this data up to 2014 was not fully compliant with our Statistics Act. Our Stats Act is currently being reviewed, so may result in some changes in the future. But until this review is completed, we have decided to take a more cautious approach with the release of business demography data. As a consequence, in 2015, we introduced new confidentiality rules.